Ambassador stood at the observation window of the UES Harmony and watched the alien station grow larger. She had waited 30 years for this moment. Her whole life had been about building bridges between people, and now she would try to build one between species. The Dominion was old, very old. They had ruled their part of space for 12,000 years. When humans first went to the stars, they watched them with cold eyes. They saw humans as young and weak. They saw them as insects building little nests on distant worlds. But humans grew fast. They spread across hundreds of planets in just 2 centuries, and finally they agreed to meet them. Brought 42 people with her. There were language experts who had studied speech for years. There were culture specialists who understood alien customs. There were security officers, but she had ordered them to carry no weapons. This was a mission of peace. Weapons would send the wrong message. She also brought gifts, human paintings and sculptures, music from every culture on Earth, books of poetry and science. She wanted to show that humans had something to offer, that friendship between their peoples could make both stronger. The ship docked with a gentle bump, checked her uniform one last time and walked toward the airlock. Her heart was beating fast, but she kept her face calm. A good diplomat never showed fear. The station was huge. The corridors were built for beings much larger than humans. Everything was made of dark metal and strange crystal that glowed with soft purple light. Armed guards stood at every corner. They were tall, covered in scales that shifted color as they moved. Each one had 4 eyes that followed the humans with expressions could not read. They were led to something called the Chamber of Supplicants. Did not like that name. A supplicant was someone who begged. She had not come to beg, but she said nothing. Different cultures had different ways. The chamber was designed to make visitors feel small. The ceiling rose so high it disappeared into shadow. The floor was polished like a mirror. At the far end, on a throne made of bones from conquered species, sat the Archon. He was the largest had ever seen. His scales were deep gold, a sign of royal blood. His 4 eyes looked down at the humans like a man might look at ants crawling across his floor. His mouth was filled with sharp teeth, and when he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "You come to us as equals." The translator device turned his words into English, but it could not hide the mockery in his tone. Stepped forward. She kept her back straight and her voice steady. "We come as friends. Humanity seeks no dominion over others. We seek only understanding. We hope that our 2 peoples can learn from each other and grow together." She held up a small device and activated it. A hologram appeared in the air showing images of Earth, blue oceans, green forests, cities filled with light, children playing in parks, artists painting, scientists working together. "This is what we offer," said. "Not conquest, not power. We offer our friendship freely given." The Archon leaned forward. His claws tapped against his throne, making a sound like knives on stone. Around the chamber, the nobles whispered to each other in their own language. The translator could not pick up what they said. "Friendship," the Archon repeated. The word sounded strange in his mouth. "You offer us friendship, as if you were our equals, as if your tiny lives and tiny worlds could mean anything to us." Felt the first cold touch of fear in her stomach. Something was wrong. The Archon was not just dismissing her. He was angry, insulted, as if her offer of peace was the worst thing she could have said. "We do not seek to insult you," she said carefully. "We only wish to—" "Silence!" The Archon rose from his throne. He was even larger than had thought. "You come to us. You stand in our sacred chamber, and you speak as if you deserve to stand beside us. You do not understand what you are. You are not our equals. You are not our friends. You are nothing." He made a gesture with one clawed hand. Everything happened very fast. The guards moved, not with weapons, with their claws and teeth. They fell upon the humans like wolves upon sheep. Security officers tried to protect their people, but they had no weapons. They had no chance. saw her people fall around her. She heard their screams. She smelled blood. They were not killing quickly. They were making it slow, making it painful, making it a show for the nobles who watched and laughed. She knew she was going to die, but she was still a diplomat. She still had a duty. Her hand found the small recorder in her pocket. She activated it with a touch. The device would send everything through quantum channels directly to Earth. Whatever happened next, humanity would know. "Do not come in peace," she said into the recorder. Her voice was calm even as shadows closed around her. "They do not understand peace. They only understand." A claw tore through her shoulder. She fell to the polished floor. Her blood spread across it like a red mirror. She did not scream. She would not give them that. Her last thought was of Earth, of blue oceans and green forests, of children who would grow up in a galaxy that suddenly seemed much darker than before. Then there was only silence. The broadcast the slaughter across their own space. They wanted every species they ruled to see what happened to those who dared approach them as equals. They wanted to teach a lesson. By accident, the broadcast reached human space too. 12 billion people watched. On 100 worlds and 1,000 stations, humans saw their diplomat murdered. They saw her offer peace and receive death. They saw her fall with dignity while aliens laughed. And something changed in humanity that day. The thought they were teaching humans to fear. They thought they were showing the young species its proper place in the universe. They thought they were being strong. They were wrong. They had just made the worst mistake in 12,000 years of history. They had done something that no one had ever managed to do before. They had united humanity. And humanity, when united, was something the galaxy had never seen. The United Earth Council had not called a full emergency meeting in 90 years. The last time was during the Great Plague that killed millions. Before that, it was the asteroid that almost hit Earth. These were moments when humanity faced death itself. This was different. This was not about survival. This was about something deeper. Fleet Admiral James stood at the center of the Great Chamber. Around him sat representatives from 247 human worlds. Some had traveled for weeks to be here. Others attended through hologram, their images flickering in their seats. But every single representative was present. No one was absent. No one had refused to come. Behind, a screen showed Ambassador's face, not the moment of her death. That recording existed, but no one could watch it more than once. Instead, the screen showed her last words, her calm eyes, her steady voice. "Do not come in peace. They do not understand peace. They only understand." The recording cut to static. It had played 1,000 times already. It would play 1,000 more. "3 days ago," said, "the Dominion sent us a message. They have declared humanity a subjugate species. They expect our complete surrender within 1 year. If we refuse, they will begin what they call systematic culling. They will kill humans until we submit." The chamber was silent, not the silence of fear, something else, something that felt like pressure building before a storm. "The Control 300 star systems," continued. "Their fleet numbers in the tens of thousands. They have been fighting wars for longer than humans have existed as a species. By every measure, they are stronger than us." A representative from Tau stood up. Her name was, and she was known for her careful thinking. "Admiral, I must ask the hard question. Can we win this war?" Looked at her, his face showed nothing. "By traditional calculation, no, we cannot." Murmurs spread through the chamber, nodded as if this confirmed her fears. "Then perhaps we should consider other options. They are cruel, but they are not mindless. If we offer them something of value." "Offer them what?" The voice came from the other side of the chamber. Representative of the African Union worlds had risen to his feet. He was an old man with white hair and eyes that had seen too much. "What do we offer, Representative? Our dignity, our freedom, our children." "I speak of survival." "No, you speak of surrender." His voice was not angry. It was tired, sad, and somehow that made it more powerful. I watched that recording. We all did. I saw our people die on their knees because they came in peace. I saw the laugh as they killed. And now you ask me to negotiate with them. His face was pale. What choice do we have? We have the choice our ancestors always had. Looked around the chamber. When invaders came to our lands, when tyrants tried to chain us, when empires told us we were nothing, we had the same choice then that we have now. He raised his hand and pointed at the screen, at its frozen face. She gave them our best offer, peace, friendship, a hand extended in hope, and they cut that hand off and laughed. So now we make our second offer, and I promise you it will not be peace. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded war. Others begged for reason. The noise rose until it seemed the walls themselves would crack. Admiral raised his hand. He did not shout. He did not need to. Something in his presence commanded silence, and silence came. I will not promise you victory, he said. I am a soldier, not a liar. They are stronger, they are older. They have crushed species like us before. If we fight them, many of us will die, perhaps most of us. He paused. His eyes moved across the chamber, meeting the gaze of each representative in turn. But I will tell you what I know. I know that we are not like the other species they have conquered. I know that humanity does not break easily. I know that we have fought against impossible odds before and won. I know that when we are pushed to the wall, we become something different, something that does not count the cost, something that does not stop. His voice dropped lower, but somehow it carried to every corner of the chamber. They have read our history. They know we fight among ourselves. They think this makes us weak. They do not understand. When we fight among ourselves, it is because we are strong enough to afford it. When an enemy rises against us, we stop our quarrels. We become one fist, one blade, one fury that does not end until the enemy is ash. He turned to face the Great Seal of the United Earth Council, the symbol of human unity among the stars. They killed our diplomat. They killed 43 people who came in peace. They broadcast it to the galaxy and laughed, and now they expect us to kneel. He turned back to the representatives. I say we show them what happens when humanity stands together. I say we teach them that some species do not kneel. I say we make them pay a price so high that no one in this galaxy will ever think to test us again. The vote was called. One by one, the representatives spoke their answer. From the old worlds near Earth to the distant colonies at the edge of known space. From the rich inner systems to the struggling outposts. From every culture and nation and people that made up humanity. The vote was unanimous. Every single representative voted the same way. For the first time in the history of the United Earth Council, humanity spoke with one voice. The answer was war. Total war. No negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. They had wanted to teach humanity its place. They were about to learn their own. They expected chaos. They expected humans to run, to panic, to fight among themselves while their empire crumbled. They had seen it before with other species. Fear always broke the weak ones apart. But humanity did not run. Humanity went silent. For 6 months, human space closed like a fist. Trade routes shut down. Communication stopped. The borders sealed tight. Spies who had easily moved through human society suddenly found nothing. It was as if a wall had risen around every human world, and behind that wall, something was happening that no outsider could see. Behind that wall, humanity was transforming. Every shipyard in human space stopped building civilian vessels. Passenger ships, cargo haulers, exploration craft, all of it ended overnight. The shipyards began building weapons of war. Workers who had made luxury yachts now made fighters. Engineers who had designed pleasure cruisers now designed battleships. The factories changed too. Companies that made consumer goods switched to military production. Robots that had assembled toys now assembled missiles. Machines that had woven clothing now wove armor. Every resource, every worker, every piece of metal and plastic and silicon was redirected toward one goal. Dr. Sarah had spent her life building medical technology. Her nanobots had saved millions of lives, repairing damaged bodies from the inside. She was a healer. She had never wanted to hurt anyone. Now she led a team of scientists building weapons. Her healing nanobots became killing machines, designed to tear apart enemy ships from within. She worked 18 hours a day. She did not sleep. When her colleagues asked if she was okay, she showed them the recording of Ambassador's death. "I was a healer," she said. "Now I am something else." Had built the finest luxury spacecraft in human space. His ships were beautiful, elegant, designed for comfort and pleasure. Rich people paid fortunes to travel in his creations. Now his factories built carriers, massive ships that could hold thousands of fighters. Ugly, brutal machines designed for one purpose. Did not complain. He did not mourn his beautiful ships. He worked harder than he had ever worked in his life. "We can build beautiful things again," he said, "after we survive." The draft was never needed. Recruitment centers opened expecting to force people into service. Instead, they were overwhelmed with volunteers. Young people who had never thought about fighting demanded weapons. Old soldiers who had retired decades ago came back. Scientists who had sworn never to work on weapons stood in line to sign up. It was not just anger, though there was plenty of that. It was something deeper. They had done something that no human conflict had ever managed. They had made all of humanity feel small. They had looked at everything humans had built and called it worthless. They had killed the woman who came in peace and laughed while they did it. Humans could forgive many things. They could not forgive that. Admiral oversaw everything. He barely slept. He moved from shipyard to shipyard, from factory to factory, pushing everyone harder. When people said something was impossible, he told them to do it anyway. When they said they needed more time, he told them they had no time. In 3 months, the human fleet tripled in size. In 6 months, it grew 5 times larger. Ships that should have taken years to build were finished in weeks. New technologies that had been theoretical became real. Weapons that scientists had refused to build on ethical grounds were now built without hesitation. The ethical concerns had died with Ambassador. Secret projects began in hidden bases across human space. They had code names that meant nothing to outsiders. Project Prometheus created bombs made of antimatter, capable of destroying entire fleets in a single blast. Project Hydra built drones that could copy themselves, turning one weapon into millions. Project changed soldiers into something more than human, faster and stronger and harder to kill. And there was Project Nemesis. Even Admiral did not know the full details. Only a handful of scientists knew what it was. They worked in a facility that did not officially exist, building something that would only be used if all else failed. Humanity had always chosen not to build certain things. They had the knowledge. They had the capability. But they had decided that some weapons were too terrible to create. They had held themselves back out of morality, out of hope, out of belief that the universe could be good. That belief was gone now. When the 6 months ended, the wall around human space came down. Scout ships slipped through to see what had changed. What they found terrified them. The humans they remembered were gone. The peaceful explorers, the friendly traders, the curious scientists, all gone. In their place was something new. A civilization rebuilt from the ground up for war. A species that had looked at itself and decided to become a weapon. The scouts sent their reports back to the Dominion. The commanders read them and felt something they had not felt in centuries. They felt doubt. But it was too late for doubt. They had started this. They had killed the Diplomat. They had laughed at human weakness. Now they would learn what human strength looked like. The human fleet moved out from its borders, heading toward space. Millions of ships, billions of soldiers, weapons that had never existed before. And at the front, on the bridge of the dreadnought UES Retribution, Admiral gave his first order. Find them, break them, show no mercy. The war had begun. The first fleet arrived at New Helsinki expecting easy prey. 18,000 warships, crewed by soldiers who had never lost a battle, descended on a human colony of 3 million people. The fleet commander was a veteran of 60 conquest campaigns. He had crushed rebellions and broken empires. He knew how weak species behaved when the Dominion came for them. They always ran, they always begged, they always broke. But when the fleet reached New Helsinki, they found nothing. The planet was empty. Every human was gone. Every building stood vacant. Every resource had been stripped away. The cities were hollow shells, the farms were bare dirt, the factories were silent metal skeletons. 3 million people had vanished without a trace. In orbit, a single automated beacon floated in the darkness. It broadcast a message in the language. "You wanted war, we have prepared your welcome." The fleet commander stared at the message. He did not understand it. Weak species did not leave messages like this. Weak species did not abandon entire worlds in perfect order. Something was wrong, but he could not see what. He ordered the fleet to continue to the next system, standard procedure. The humans were obviously running, trying to escape deeper into their own space. They would be caught eventually. They would learn their place. The fleet entered the hyperspace corridor that connected the stars. They emerged into death. The exit point of the corridor had been turned into a killing ground. Millions of mines filled the space, each one packed with enough explosive to crack a battleship in half. Weapons platforms floated in the darkness, their guns already tracking targets. Gravity wells pulled ships off course, tearing them apart as they tried to correct. The fleet arrived in standard formation, as they always did. They had never needed to be careful before. No one had ever been waiting for them. The humans had been waiting for 6 months. The first wave of ships died before they could even raise their shields. The second wave managed to fight back, but they were firing blind into a storm of weapons. The third wave tried to retreat, but the corridor behind them had been collapsed. There was no escape. And then the human fleet arrived. They came from 12 different directions at once. They used hyperspace routes that they did not know existed, routes that humanity had mapped during their years of peaceful exploration. They had dismissed humans as harmless wanderers, curious children poking at the edges of the galaxy. They had never imagined that those wanderers had been learning every secret path through the stars. Admiral commanded from the UES Retribution. His voice was calm as he gave orders, but his eyes were cold. He had watched the recording of Ambassador's death. He had watched it many times. He remembered every second of it. "No surrender accepted," he said. "No quarter given. They wanted to teach us our place, show them theirs." The battle of the corridor lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the first fleet no longer existed. 18,000 ships had been reduced to floating debris. The few survivors who managed to escape carried stories of human weapons they had never seen before, human tactics they could not understand, human fury they could not match. The humans had lost almost a third of their forces. It was a terrible cost, but the survivors did not stop to mourn. They refueled their ships. They loaded fresh weapons. They moved to the next target. This was not a single battle. This was the beginning of a long campaign. Over the next 18 months, humanity pushed deep into space. They attacked without warning and without mercy. They used weapons that made veteran commanders weep with terror. They fought in ways that broke every rule of civilized warfare. The Galactic Council, a group of ancient species who had watched younger races rise and fall sent representatives to negotiate peace. They arrived at the human border expecting to be received with diplomatic courtesy. The humans refused to let them enter. "Peace was our first offer," the human response said. "It was rejected. This is our second offer. There will not be a third." The Galactic Council tried again. They sent threats. They sent warnings. They spoke of consequences if humanity continued its aggression. The humans ignored them. World after world fell to the human advance. They had never faced an enemy like this. They had never seen a species that fought harder the more it suffered. They had never encountered warriors who seemed to welcome death if it meant taking enemies with them. The subject races of the Dominion, species who had been conquered and enslaved for thousands of years, watched the war with growing hope. They saw the losing. They saw the empire that had crushed them beginning to crack. And one by one, they began to rise up. Rebellions spread across space. Slave worlds threw off their chains. Conquered peoples remembered their pride and reached for weapons they had hidden for generations. The Dominion found itself fighting on 1,000 fronts at once. The economy, built on conquest and tribute, collapsed under the strain. They could not build ships fast enough. They could not train soldiers fast enough. They could not adapt fast enough to enemies who changed tactics every battle. And still the humans came. They did not stop to occupy the worlds they captured. They did not pause to celebrate victories. They pushed forward with a single-minded determination that horrified observers across the galaxy. "What are they?" a commander asked before his ship was destroyed. "What have we awakened?" The answer came from a human broadcast that spread across the war zone. It was simple. It was terrifying. "We are humanity. You killed our diplomat. You laughed while she died. Now we are coming to teach you why that was a mistake." The war continued. The fell back, and the human fleet grew closer to there with every passing day. Prime had never known war. For 12,000 years, they had stood untouched while their fleets conquered the galaxy. It was the heart of their empire, protected by defenses that had never been tested because no enemy had ever come close enough to test them. Billions of lived there, secure in the knowledge that their world was untouchable. The human fleet arrived on a cold morning, emerging from hyperspace like a tide of steel and fire. The orbital defenses activated. Thousands of weapons platforms, each one capable of destroying a battleship, opened fire on the invaders. Ground-based cannons that could crack moons launched their deadly payloads. The sky above Prime burned with the light of 1,000 explosions. It was not enough. The humans had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. They had studied every defense, mapped every weapon, planned every approach. Their ships took terrible losses, but they kept coming. For every human vessel destroyed, 2 more took its place. For every weapon platform silenced, 10 more human guns found new targets. Admiral led from the front, as he always did. His staff had begged him to stay behind the lines where it was safe. He had refused. He had promised himself that he would see this through to the end, and he was not a man who broke promises. The battle for Prime lasted 9 days. 9 days of constant fighting, of ships burning in the void, of soldiers dying on both sides. 9 days of hell. On the 10th day, the last defense fell. Human soldiers walked through the streets of the capital. They passed monuments to conquest, statues celebrating 12,000 years of domination. They walked in silence, their weapons ready, their eyes cold. Admiral went to the chamber of supplicants. The room where Ambassador had died was exactly as he had seen it in the recording. The high ceiling vanishing into shadow. The polished floor that had been stained with human blood. The throne of bones where the Archon had sat and laughed while innocents were slaughtered. Stood in the center of the chamber for a long time. He felt the weight of 2 years of war pressing down on him, the millions of humans who had died, the billions of who had fallen. The entire galaxy changed forever by what had happened in this room. He felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The Archon who had ordered the massacre was dead. His own nobles had killed him when it became clear the war was lost. They had hoped to save themselves by sacrificing him. It had not worked. The humans did not care about politics. They cared about justice. The new Archon was brought before in chains. He was young for barely 1,000 years old. He had inherited a war he did not start and an empire that was already ashes. His scales had lost their shine. His 4 eyes were dull with defeat. But even now, even in chains, he carried himself with the pride of 12,000 years. "You have won," the Archon said. His voice was steady, though his world had fallen around him. "What do you want from us? Our remaining worlds, our resources, our complete submission. Name your price and we will pay it." Admiral looked at the alien who had inherited the consequences of another's arrogance. He thought about everything humanity had lost: the lives, the innocence, the hope that the galaxy could be a place of peace. "We want you to remember," said. The Archon blinked, confused. "Remember what?" "Everything." The terms of surrender were broadcast across the galaxy. Every species, every world, every being with a receiver heard what humanity demanded from the Dominion. The Dominion was dissolved. 12,000 years of empire ended in a single announcement. The military was dismantled, their warships scrapped, their weapons destroyed. The subject races who had been enslaved were freed. The territory that they had ruled was divided among those they had oppressed. But humanity took nothing for itself. No worlds, no tribute, no slaves, no resources. The species that had just proven itself capable of destroying the greatest empire in galactic history asked for nothing material. They asked for one thing only: a memorial. On Prime, in the exact location of the Chamber of Supplicants, humanity built a monument. 43 pillars of white stone rose from the polished floor, each one bearing the name and face of a human who had died in that room. They stood in a circle, as the diplomatic team had stood when they arrived to offer peace. At the center of the circle stood a statue of Ambassador. She was carved from white marble, her hand extended in the gesture of greeting she had offered before her death. Her face was calm. Her eyes looked toward the future. Beneath her statue, carved in every language known to the galaxy, were the words humanity wanted the universe to remember. "We came in peace. We were answered with blood. We left them ashes. Let this be the lesson: humanity remembers. Humanity responds. And humanity never starts the fight, but we always finish it." The galaxy watched, and the galaxy learned. In the centuries that followed, humanity returned to its peaceful ways. They explored new stars. They built new wonders. They traded and collaborated and extended hands of friendship to species across the cosmos. They became known as fair partners, honest negotiators, and generous allies. But no one ever forgot what they were capable of. No one ever tested them again. And every year, on the anniversary of the massacre, humans across the galaxy paused for a moment of silence. They remembered and her 42 companions, who had died for the crime of hopping for peace. They remembered the price of that hope. And they remembered the lesson they had taught the universe. Some species look weak because they choose to be gentle. Some hands are soft because they have never needed to become fists. Some people seem harmless because they have decided that peace is better than war. But push them far enough, and they will show you what they really are. Humanity had hoped to never show the galaxy its teeth. They made them bite. The galaxy would never forget.